Hey everyone, welcome to Printy Creator. It's Sarah here. A few people have been asking about doing sunset skies. They are a little bit tricky. You've just got to work with the paint and what you've got. So I'm going to have a go at sharing that with you. This is just my usual little piece of A4 paper. I've drawn a little boat on just so that we've got something today, and then I'm just going to run a little bit of cable as if it's tied up somewhere on it, but that's just some reason. So my sky is over halfway on my paper, so it's going to be mainly about the boat and the sky. We're going to be using cerulean blue or cobalt blue, a little bit of ultramarine, some Hansa yellow, and some Gamboge yellow, so a lighter lemony yellow and an orangey yellow, an orange and a bit of maybe red. And then to make the sky darker, we're going to be using a little bit of burnt sienna, oranges and purples to just draw the clouds in. It's really easy to overwork skies, so we've got to make sure we stop at the right time. And it is a bit of a magical mystery tour because it is what watercolour is. So I've given my paints a little bit of a squirt. I'm just going to actually give them another little squirt. Sounds like a water bottle might need filling up. And I'm just wetting off the paper. I'm going to pause the video in a minute and go and fill my squirty bottle up. So I'm wetting up right up to the edge of this beach area because the sunset sky is going to be reflected in those waves. And then I'm just going to load my paper up at the top, and then I'm just going to leave that to soak in just for a minute whilst I just go and refill my squirty bottle. I find these little squirty bottles invaluable. I think I got 3 in a pack from one of the cheapy shops, and they just let me keep some of these bits of my painting wet without over wetting them, because ideally we'd have the paper wet but not running. But it's quite difficult because sometimes some parts dry quicker than others. So taking a little bit of time to make sure that your paper is nicely wet and ready to sort of absorb some paint is a good move. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of this lemon yellow. Just make sure that we're so just dropping in. My board's on a very slight angle. You could work flat for this one. You do want to be able to tilt your board though. So onto the horizon line and into just into the sea. I'm dropping some pale lemon yellow, and then a little bit of orangey yellow, and I'm just going to, so this is a new Gamboge yellow, and I'm just starting to build up the base, the translucency of the sky. Nice and gently. So I'm just going to add a little bit of cadmium red into that new Gamboge yellow to make a more of an orangey colour. I'm just dropping that in. And it'll bleed into the sea, and that's fine. And I'm just controlling it with tilting my board. So I'm just going to let that settle into the wash for a little minute. And then I'm just mixing up a little touch of cadmium red and that new Gamboge. And I'm just dropping it in so it's a little bit redder. Starting to just build some of those clouds and that sense of movement. If you get a big bead of water like that, just mop it up, let it run, mop it up, otherwise you'll end up with black runs. And make sure when you washing your brush that you take some of the water out of your brush before picking your paint up, because otherwise all you're doing is putting more and more water onto the paper and diluting everything so much more. So a little bit more stronger colour now into that mix. Just gradually building up some cloud shapes. I'm just going to turn it and tilt it so it runs down the page, and then I can just pick up. I just watch my brush take a little bit off my brush. I'm just going to soften that out, pick up. So a little bit of cerulean blue and ultramarine blue mixed, fairly thick. And we're going to start just adding that. Oh, that one's dried up at the top. I've not kept an eye on that. So I'm just going to give the top of this page a bit of a squirt. And I'm just going to add that beautiful. Now this works because we can't put the blue next to the yellow, because obviously we end up with it turning green on us. So this way is a bit of a cheat, but it's a cheat that works. If we're just going to add the blue of the sky, which is at the top of the sky because it's early evening. I've just added a bit of ultramarine into there for a little bit of depth at the top. So plenty of pigment, but I'm just letting it do its thing on the page, mix on the page. And just drop in a few blue bits in between to start building some of these clouds through the natural mixes on the paper. And I'm just going to turn it over soon. So again, it gets to run downhill. up any excess that comes off your brush. And we're putting just these gentle shadows of clouds in. So it's starting to come together. So a little bit of red and blue, and a little bit of yellow added in there as well to make a darker brown. You can just use burnt sienna at this point. I'm starting to just put on the start of the darker clouds. Remembering that the smaller ones come near the horizon and larger ones come down. And you're wanting to get that sense of movement and connectivity. Just initially using that orangey red and a little bit of cerulean blue or a little bit of ultramarine blue into there to start building up the tone, building up your skies. Always load your brush up. So as it's drying, I want to just add a little bit more purpley mix into that blue, just to darken some of the clouds' bottom edges. Add a little bit of depth into it. If you think you're picking up more paint than you're putting down, wash your brush and then just pick some more up off the palette. Keep it loose and moving. Remember, smaller, lighter clouds towards the horizon. Tend to be sort of wispier and straighter. Since I started painting, I don't think I look at skies in the same way, really. And then a bit more sort of darker purples. Still with the same base, so burnt sienna, ultramarine. And there's a point where you actually have to just stop. Just going to, while it's damp, I'm just going to run some darker colours into this sea. So they're just literally the cloud colours running through the sea to sort of harmonise it. And it just add a little bit more of that dark tone with a touch of that orangey colour, so that red, blue and a touch of that New Gamboge yellow in there for a bit of an orangey glow. But I don't want them too dark, and they can very quickly become quite muddy coloured. So as always, less is more. But those different tones of clouds will be really helpful. So as you can see, this is just starting to drop down, so I'm just going to tilt the board, give it a tiny spritz, but from a distance so I don't disturb it too much. Got a lump of paint for some reason there. And I'm just going to dry it flat. So we will come back and see how everything's done once it's dry. So here we are, we're back, we're dry. I did leave it for a little while to settle in. I love this mottled bit that's come from one of the little squirts into the drying wash. I love that tone change. I love this dark, deep orange that's come. But as I said, it's always a bit of see what happens with watercolour. You've got it's a balancing act between the two, and rarely will you ever get to do the same sky twice, because the water will work differently. So I just want to put some waves into here. You could use a number 4 brush squeezed out and flattened if you haven't got a flat brush, but I'm going to use this small 1/4 inch flat brush because it's got quite a nice edge. So I'll just wet it, take the water out of it and just squeeze it, and you can see it's got a really nice sharp flat edge there. So I'm going to use that, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the purple, so ultramarine blue and a little bit of cadmium red. Mixed together makes a nice purple, and it's the same purple that I used under my clouds. And I'm just going to I'm just going to use the thinner brush. I'm just going to put on the horizon. And then just some little bits of waves, because actually the sea goes quite dark and sort of browny coloured. It's not the focus of our work, but we're just using the tones to build up the sea. Oops. Might have to have a bit of land there now. Let's put a little bit of land there. I'm just going to put bit more blue into that land, make it look a bit more like it is land. And some distant hills, because I made a bit of a wobble, but when you're making something up out of your own mind's eye, that's fine. So I just follow it. And it just makes it look a little bit like the sea's there, it's got something going on for it. You can add a little bit more cerulean blue into the mix with a touch of that purple, nice and light. Just build some of this blue colour in the foreground if you want. But actually the sea doesn't look that blue at dusk. And we still want some of that lovely sky transparency to show through. So, well, here we are, we're going all right. We've got a beautiful sky, a really simple sea. So it's time to move on. So likewise, with the beach goes sort of a dusky, purpley, browny colour. So I'm still going to start with my yellow ochre base colour. Oh, it's got a touch of the reds crept in. But I'm going to add some of that purpley colour to dull it down. And a touch of that blue. So I've made a really weak light browny colour. I'm just going to add some white, Chinese white into there. And then I'm literally just going to paint the beach around the boat. So just working around the edge of the boat. I'm picking up these colours and just dropping them in. I'm using my big brush, so not too fiddly. I love this sort of different colours and gradients, just picking up some blue for this foreground. We're going to put some shadows on later, so that's okay. Painting round, plenty of water in this mix. Oops. The direction of the beach. I'm just going to add a little bit more tones and values into the beach. Particularly some blue down that water's edge, and it does dry lighter. I'm just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into that mix, into that bluey purple mix, and well, it's the usual. Whilst it's wet, you can do what you want with it. Once it's starting to dry, it's a bit more difficult. You can use your squirty bottle. And because I can, I'm going to just grab my table salt. Oops, and I'm just going to add a sprinkling of table salt for a bit of sparkle on the sand. And then we're going to leave that to dry. So they're about starting to dry, and I'm just going to go in and work with my little number 4 brush onto the boat. So I'm starting off with just a little bit of very watery ultramarine with a touch of that red in, just to mute it down a little bit. And I'm just going to paint the inside of the boat. And I'm just adding a little bit of that shadow colour while it's damp. And I've got my browny orangey reddy colour. Just going to plenty of water. And I'm going to cool that down with a little bit of blue into the shadow. So you've got a nice play of the warm colour and the shadow colour coming together. The inside of the boat. And we've got my, here we can see the salt starting to work, which is really nice. Some little sparkles coming on the beach, which will give it a nice sense of difference. But I'm just going to mix up burnt sienna and a neutral tint to make a brown, and then adding a little bit of ultramarine to make a dark chocolatey brown. And I'm just going to grab some tissue, mask off my sky and my sea before I end up with splatters in there. And then whilst this is drying, I'm just going to splat just to add a bit of texture into the sea front, particularly this foreground. And changing your direction. And if you get some splashes on your boat and you don't want it, you just get a damp brush and it'll just lift off those little splatters. But that's a really nice way into a damp wash of just getting some different tones and feelings of different colours. And a nice way of just protecting your wash as well. So I've got a nice start there. So yeah, again, you can see how this is granulating nicely between themselves, because the ultramarine granulates beautifully as a colour. So I'm going to just let that dry naturally as much as I possibly can, and then I might finish it off with a hairdryer. But Oh, I might just give this a little bit of a spritz because I quite like it as well. There we go. Leave it a couple of minutes and then just finish it off with a hairdryer, and then I can do this side and then we can put the shadows on. Okay, I've just used the hairdryer to ensure that this part is dry enough, because I don't really want it bleeding into that wash, but I'm happy for these damper spaces to just have more time to do their salt magic, really. So I'm still working with my little number 4 brush, and I'm going to mix up a little pink. Well, I'm actually going to use Potter's Pink because I've just bought that one, and it's a really nice muted pink, but you could make a pink just using red, white and a little touch of blue to just mute it down a little bit. And so I'm going to just paint the side of this boat in quite a translucent way, using this beautiful Potter's Pink colour. So I just wash my brush. I'm just going to get my bigger wash brush for a minute because I've got a bigger space now. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that Potter's Pink and I'm just letting it run. I'm going to do that side as well and across there. So it's like a base wash. So this side is going to be catching the orangeness of that sunset. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this orange that we use, this burnt, into that side. And a little bit down the front of here. Starting to think about the directions of any boards, boarding, oops, digital art. So again, I'm going to let that dry because then I can go back into it. It's just nicely bleeding. Add a little bit more, soak that up. There we go. So back with you soon once it's dried. So this is drying off now. I've just grabbed my number 0 rigger brush and I'll just bring it to a really nice point because I want to be able to do the brown here. So what I'm looking for to balance this is like an orangey brown. So a little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine to make a mid-tone brown. And I just want to run So straight lines aren't my thing, but water is your friend with this. And then I'm just going to use a little tiny bit of darker tone around the inside of this edge. And I'm also, just whilst I'm here, I'm just going to put on these little, I don't know, they might be rowing handles or something. So that you've got just darken in there as well. There we go. So we're starting to take shape. I want to run darker but bluer, so cerulean blue into that mix. So brown, the brown that I've used, the cerulean blue, and a little bit of this potter's pink that I used. So whatever colour you've used on your boat. Actually, I did a touch of ultramarine because it didn't look blue enough for me. So I'm looking for a pink based purple for, because I've used that in the thing. So just take the excess off your brush. And we're just going to put the prow of the boat in here. Using the same colour. I'm just going under that line to drop a little bit of a shadow. Grabbing my water on my number 4 brush, and I'm just going to soften some of those planks into the wash. More water, take the excess off. Water, take the excess off, brush it away. Don't want the harsh lines yet, but we want them to appear like they are there and they are doing something. Water, push them away. And we're going to go back into this back area. I'm just going to drop in some darks into that damp wash. So it's got an idea that we've got some planks of wood on the boat. And again, you can work with the shadows on this and build them up. Oh, I nearly forgot the other side as well. So just building those shadow areas up in damp washes just helps. Just adding a bit more of that bit of a spritz, soften it up a little bit. And just blend. And again, you can play with this for as long as you want or not. It's up to you. It wants to be there, but not there. So we're on to the shadow colour. So classic shadow colour, ultramarine and alizarin crimson or magenta, depending on your preferences. Probably magenta's a nice shadow colour for this one. And we've got quite a strong shadow that we're going to put in around this boat area and into that shadow side of the boat and the inside of the shadow side of the boat. A little bit of that Potter's pink and drop it into the shadow. Take the water out of my brush. I'm just going to lift out a little bit of a highlight. And I'm just going to soften a bit of that as well. I want the shadow side colour to be there, but I also want to see some of that pretty browny pinks. And we're just going to darken that shadow colour. I'm just going to add a little bit of indigo into it and a little bit more magenta to make a darker purple. So into the damp wash, keeping along the edge of that boat, I'm just dropping the darker shadow in. And I'm going to just drop a darker shadow in this bit of the boat, and I'm going to soften that back in a minute, so I'm not bothered so much. And I'm just going to drop a bit of a darker shadow into there. So I'm softening this one off. I've got my number 4 brush, some water on, and I'm just running it into the even more paint, a thicker paint, so a bit of Payne's grey and magenta, and I'm just going to go in right into the base of this boat now. So I'm just basically building up this shadow and trying to help it sit into this evening. I'm going to run a dark down there, and I'm just going to soften it off with some water on my brush. seems to have lost its pink. I've just added a little bit of lamp black into there. Turn it round and run a little bit of water through. I'm not sure about that really dark on the boat, so I'm just going to lift that out with a thirsty brush. When it's dry, I think I might even go with it now. Just run a bit of the pink through. Just to get the colour back. So, here we go. I'm doing all right. Just going to spritz this a little bit, and I'm just going to dab up some of these edges of the dark to lighten them a bit. And then I'm going to get this is dry, just going to get a really good dark on my brush, and I'm just going to run this cable along the sand. So I'll just leave that to dry for a minute. So I've just finished it off with a hairdryer, and I've rubbed the salt off, or the majority of the salt off. Okay, so this just feels a little bit flat, so I'm just going to run some ideas of the planks. Going round the boat. I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow colour in. It just feels like there isn't enough depth. colour of this boat. I might even glaze over it in a bright pink. Might be a good idea. Just wanted it to have a bit more of a pinky feel. So I'm just getting a small mop brush and I'm going to go for a more pinky feel, I think, to this boat. I'm just going to glaze over the top of it. Oh, that's better. I wanted it to be definitely pink. Having a little bit of this burnt sienna into the glaze to just bring a bit of harmony with the sand. That looks better. And there's a point where you have to just stop and stop fiddling and accept it. Otherwise you end up overworking it. So I'm going to do that. And I hope the main thing that we were wanting to achieve was to look at how to do the sky, and I think the sky's worked out quite nicely. The boat's okay, gives you an idea. I might just get a little bit of my little white and highlight that. As always, less is more. I quite like it. Not a bad one. I hope it's given you some ideas. I'm really tired now, so I need to stop.